2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Don't Do That, the podcast where we talk about what not to do at work and beyond.
As equity practitioners, we found ourselves often thinking that folks should stop doing things before they start doing things. Hence the title of our podcast, Don't Do That. I'm Anee. I'm an equity coach, organizational equity strategist, and educator with a deep curiosity for how to improve systems and a commitment to lift others as I continue to learn and grow.
I'm Karen, and I've worked in social justice for over a decade. I'm a consultant, coach, and thought partner. My purpose is to make community matter. I do that by helping leaders create better work environments. Anee and I met as consultants and quickly became friends. Collectively, we have over 25 years of experience navigating equity, inclusion, and justice in the workplace. Don't Do That is a platform to tell stories about making mistakes at work and how to fix them. The views on this podcast are our own. We do not speak on behalf of our organizations or the communities we mention. All right, welcome back, listeners, to season 2 of Don't Do That. We are excited to be back with you again. And on today's episode, we are discussing the always-on mentality that permeates many work cultures and if work-life balance is real or a dream deferred. So we're excited about today's discussion. But before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about where we've been and how our break was. So, Anee, welcome back.
Thank you. This conversation is so timely and just very perfect, especially as fall season kicks up. So
Yes.
I was glad that we had a break over the summer for sure.
Yeah, how was it? Any highlights that you want to share with our listeners?
The summer was great. The summer was really good to both me and my family. We traveled, which is exciting. We did some travel with the kids, which was 10 out of 10. I'll probably give like maybe a 3 out of 10 for actually getting there, but like while we were there in the location, it was definitely 10 out of 10. And then it's always nice to enjoy friends and family. So it was a great time this summer to just explore new cities and get away. What about you?
I love that. Well, my summer was a whirlwind in a lot of positive ways.
Tell us about it. Tell us about the whirlwind.
You already know, but our listeners do not. But I got engaged over the summer.
Yes, ma'am. I'll say a collective congratulations.
Yay, I'm very excited about that. Also did some traveling, did some moving, a lot of adulting, but all good things. So
Yes.
it was a good summer. Life came at me fast, but
Yes.
all good things for sure.
Yeah. And I think that is why this conversation of just like work-life balance feels so like perfectly timed as we're kicking off season 2 and coming off of like, summer and getting into the fall. It can feel tough, especially when you have a lot of life things or a lot of work things going on to find the balance among it all. So I'm happy to be having this conversation.
Me too. I think it's a constant game of like keeping the plates spinning, as folks say. And so it definitely is very front of mind for me. So let's get into it. We always like to start with the landscape and what we find in the news. And so to ground us in today's discussion, I found some research that I think will help. The first of which is that 66% of Americans say they don't have work-life balance, even though 94% believe it's important. So we want it, but we don't have it. Essentially.
That feels accurate.
Very accurate. And then in an article by Workspan Daily, author Rebecca McKenzie questions America's model of work-life balance. McKenzie points out that America has an always-on work culture that is fueled by unease about the current job market, fear of a potential recession, and backpedaling on diversity, equity, and inclusion. In the same article, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, their Better Life Index, America ranks 29th out of 41 countries on several measures of work-life balance. This is due to long work hours, the lack of a national paid parental leave policy, and return to work challenges for new mothers. So we also found in the article that a survey from Kick Resume in 2024 found that more Americans work between 41 and 51 hours per week compared to their European counterparts. So, and also Americans also take less time off and feel guilty about taking time off. So,
Mhm.
all of this definitely impacts our thoughts around work life balance and if we actually feel like we're able to achieve it. So I thought this was a great way to ground our discussion and get into it.
Yes.
So to start off, I would love to know, how do you actually define work life balance?
Yes, that is such a hard question. And I also feel like it's a newer concept. I'm not sure, as you were sort of like doing research for our conversation today, I don't remember thinking about work life balance maybe until like within the past 10 years or so. I don't think it was sort of this like larger conversation. I also was clearly in a different space in my life, like 20 years ago, just starting my career. So maybe I just was not aware of it and people were talking about it, but I had nothing to balance. So for me, when I think of work life balance, it is that I have the agency to decide what feels right and best for me without consequence, right? Whether that's in my personal life or professional life. I also feel like when we think of work life balance, we often think about the give or the ask from work, but sometimes don't center like what needs to give or what you need to ask for in life as well to maybe
Mhm.
support the things that you're doing in the workspace. So for me, it's I have the agency and resources to sort of say, here's what I need to have happen in my life, my personal life, to make work easier, and I can make those same choices in work to make my life easier.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think for me, work life balance is like my ability to be present in both spaces, in work and life, whatever that looks like. And it all depends on my capacity. Um, and so I really think about like, how can I make those choices that allows me to be present and be honest about what my capacity is and how that changes over time.
Yeah. And I think that's like the key part. Like it does change over time. Like the balance is just so dynamic. It can be day to day, it could be week to week, season to season. So I think just making sure that, folks are considering that. I don't think there's ever like a day where you can say like, okay, you know, I'm going to give equal parts to all the things.
Yeah, I think the balance is not a real thing. I think it ebbs and flows over time for
Yeah.
sure. Well, can you also talk about, one of the things I was thinking about is what my work life balance has looked like over time in my career. And so I'd love for each of us to share just a bit of like what that's looked like and what that journey has entailed as you've moved throughout your career.
Yeah. So for me, I think when I first started my career, that feels like I had the capacity to have more balance because, when I first began my career, I didn't have a ton of sort of work responsibility or life responsibility. So, as far as having like the time and resources and agency, I feel like I was able to sort of balance both of those things with time to spare. I would have to seek out additional projects at work or seek out additional things to do in my personal life. I
Yeah.
think the ebb and flow also has for me shifted depending on the type of work that I was doing. So, as an example, thinking about working in higher ed, there was a ton of evening and weekend work because that was just the nature of that industry and that field. We had evening events and weekend events. So, I would have to sort of like, alter my personal life around those things.
Mhm.
Um, even thinking about like working in consulting and travel and how do you sort of like blend all of those things. So I think it has looked different depending on what industry I'm in. And then for sure, as my sort of responsibilities in the workplace have grown and my responsibilities in my personal life, caretaking responsibilities, partner responsibilities, also wanting to just the responsibility I feel to sort of myself and my own personal growth. I think there is now less time to sort of like accomplish all the things that I desire. So the balancing act has definitely grown tougher, I think, over the years.
Yeah. And I think that's a common experience for sure. When I was thinking about my own journey, I started working in high school and did like work study in college, and it was mostly life. I was having, a
Yes.
good time. I was working for pocket change and was really only concerned about my friends and what we were doing in our free time
Yes.
and how we were having a good time. And when I got into my early career, I feel like that's when more bills came and more responsibility came in terms of actually having to, show up to work in order to finance life, which I think is what a lot of us have experienced. But I will say that to your point, like work and life felt more proportional. And I moved to DC when I was entering like my mid career. And I feel like that was really the period where it was like grind time for me.
Sure.
And I was on this like growth trajectory for myself. And I still enjoyed life, but I hadn't learned to put work in its like proper container. And I feel like my health actually suffered because of the stress of work. And that's when I realized that I had to be more protective of creating that separation between work and life and pouring into myself as much as I was like giving away. And so I think now where I am in my career, I am much more protective of my time and being present in my life. Um, and especially like I mentioned at the top, entering this new season of partnership and, getting married, I don't want to miss any of this. And
Yeah.
so I really, am working hard to make sure that I'm being honest about what my capacity is so that I can be present in my life.
Yes, yes. And I think ideally, um, because I know there are some people who equally and maybe in some cases even more so feel like they don't want to miss things in the workplace too as a result of like the things happening in their personal life. So I think the goal would be that it is of no consequence. Like you could equally commit to and give to and be present in your personal life, but that wouldn't require a sort of dramatic sacrifice to your work life as well. So, and I think some of that, I love that you mentioned like when you moved to DC. I think some of that is also regional as well. Like I've talked to friends and folks who live outside of like the Northeast, folks who are in the Midwest, and the way that they're encouraged in the workplace to prioritize family, how executive and senior leadership often talk about family and priorities outside of work. And yeah, I can see that looking and feeling different depending on where you work and live.
Yeah. The other piece I think I've noticed is how expectations change according to your relationship status. Meaning I found that like as a single person, there was an assumption that because I was single, I was also available and like had more free time
Yeah.
versus my colleagues that were married and or had children. It felt like it was like okay for them to sign off or not attend certain things because of their family obligations. And that's something that never really sat well with me. I never liked the assumption that because I was single, I was available.
I 100% agree. As someone who had to work evenings and weekends, it was always the folks who were unpartnered and did not have kids who were sort of like voluntold to take that shift of like, oh, there's a whatever program and so and so can't make it. I deeply resented that because it felt like, for me, to be honest, I'm going to be vulnerable here. Like for me, it felt like, well, how will I get that if all my evenings and weekends are spent here? Like I'm not going to find a fan unless you want me to marry my coworker or something like that. But, it felt like it was a sacrifice they were asked, a similar sacrifice of my life and time that they were asking of me. And in some ways, it felt like maybe even more so. Like I'm delaying my future and accommodating someone else to, whatever. Having said that, as someone who is partnered with kids, there is, at least in my circumstance, there is a level of inflexibility that is very difficult to finesse.
Mm,
Now, it's not just a desire not to, it's just like it is impossible. Thinking
mm,
about like, childcare and resources for that. And if a child is sick, it's like there is truly not a lot of options for me. Even if I truly just desire to be there, I would love to show up to the thing. It is like, what can I do? Like if you have a sick child. So there is a level of like, you know, some things are just not flexible.
yeah.
And at the same time, I totally get that. I can see how that can feel like, others could get resentful because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we should all be, given the same respect as it relates to the time. It's like if I can't make it and I'm single, it means I don't have it. And if I can't make it because I'm partnered or have kids, it means I can't make it for the same reason. So,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
That people should be able to say whatever feels like urgent or emergent for them, or to think of like other ways for flexibility. Maybe it's like you get more days off as a result of that. The more evenings and weekends you work, you get more, full days off as a result. Like I would totally be okay with that. Like, yep, you totally deserve. Like you can get Monday and Tuesday off. I'm going to work all 5 days. Like you've earned it with the evenings and weekends. Like I would be open to like sort of like accommodations and flexibilities in that way for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. Another question I have is about this always on work culture, because that was pointed out in the article. And I think what contributes to that is also the naming of Americans working 41 to 50 hours per week and also feeling guilty about taking time off and taking less time off. And
Hmm.
so I wanted to know, have you experienced an always on work culture?
In many, many ways, for sure. And I think the thing I notice is like the way over time work has also creeped into personal life and personal relationships, like talking about work with family or friends, or talking about work at, weekend events or on a vacation or sitting next to someone on an airplane. You find yourself sort of like networking and talking about those things.
Mhm.
Or even feeling the need to like talk about your personal life at work, or talking about, here's the latest update with like my kids or whatever it is, to sort of like connect and be more human in the workplace. I definitely have found that there is not as much sort of like clear separation
Yeah.
in all of those worlds. And you're kind of asked to show up with a lot in all of those spaces. So
Yeah. I agree with that. I also think that I've been in work cultures where there is an expectation that you will be responsive at all times. I think definitely as a consultant, you are serving clients. And so there is that expectation of being responsive all the time around the clock. And for me, I've felt that that can also bring some anxiety to me of like, I'm just trying to have a drink on the beach, but I feel like I have to be available and, ready at all times. And I feel like that is part of the always on piece that I've seen, in addition to like this blend that happens when you're not at work, but talking about work, or when you're at work and talking about, life in order to make connections.
yeah, I mean, do you think that there are some industries or roles or careers that do require that level of responsiveness? Or do you feel like all of that can be negotiated? It's more so like a broader culture that's saying, like, this is how we need to respond.
I mean, yes, I think that if you are in the medical industry, you are literally saving lives. And if you don't show up to work, then it means that someone will be harmed or suffer in some way. Then, yes, I think that makes sense. But this idea of like having to be responsive when the work is done over email, or nobody's on the operating table, and by you not answering email no one will lose their life. Like, I think we just need to have a more realistic conversation about what is urgent and like what is not, because I think a lot of times we create a sense of urgency instead of the sense of urgency being real.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's again definitely a balance. Um and I think there can be some urgency with some, like, I know folks who work in like finance, and maybe they have like a something is happening like in the market that they need to sort of be responsible for. Maybe folks who work in like the legal field, there could be maybe like a court deadline or things that um, do feel like they have like hefty consequences.
Yeah.
um, and I think what I would like to see more of is, it would be great if on teams we created, this is what I mean about like resourcing, if we created more folks who could respond rather than just sort of like individual subject matter experts. That way, if uh, on a project that Karen is on, if Ani is also on that project, Ani can respond immediately if Karen is out, right? So it's not on you to sort of say, like, I have to be the only person who can respond to this thing. It's also like how we've set up our work such that there is only one person who knows all the things who can respond. And then that person is therefore the most important and has to be on 24 hours a day, etc.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think democratizing the responsibility across teams is important.
Yeah.
So I know we've talked about what our work life balance has looked like, but I also want to share what are some things that have the greatest impact on work life balance. So Mindspace's Mindspace's employee well-being data report found that the greatest impact on well-being includes flexible work hours, a flexible work location, free healthy meals, more vacation days, improved health insurance, and physical amenities like on site gyms. That can all contribute to positive work life balance and well being for employees. So, I want to end with the discussion with this question of, what do you feel like has helped you achieve work life balance in your life and career?
Candidly, I think the most impactful thing has been modeling from either my supervisor and or executive leaders. I think even in companies that have unlimited leave and fantastic health and wellness benefits and gym incentives and great snacks and sparkle water and all the things, if your supervisor and executive leader are on and constantly working 24/7, it's hard for you to feel like you have the permission to do that. So even take advantage of those things.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That modeling piece is very important. What I found that's also been super helpful for me is when there is like an organization wide break or time off,
Mm,
because I find that, one, with everyone being off at the same time, then no one, that expectation of like being on, I feel like decreases a lot. And you don't have to worry about people sending you things or expecting you to deliver something because essentially everyone should be off. And I know that that can't happen, frequently all the time, but I think building in that time away for everyone to do it at the same time where possible, I found it to be super, super helpful and one of my favorite things.
Yeah. The only caveat I will say to that is there are some folks who sit in roles that are unable to do that. So then what then, right? So for me, I like the idea of it just sort of being like a widespread culture of like we know how to find the balance versus the folks who are in payroll can never take a week off, the folks who are required to sort of like maintain the building or things like that can never take a week off or sort of like be offline because they have sort of roles that require them to be on. So just thinking about, again, democratizing work so folks are able to sort of take breaks when they need to and sort of normalizing that culturally, especially with executive leaders to say it is of no consequence. And in fact, we encourage it. I do it. I'm offline. So please, you're welcome to do that as well.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's move into our do that and don't do that segment where we name some things according to our topic and respond do that or don't do that.
Yes.
So, do you want to start, Ani?
Sure. My do that or don't do that is if you see a colleague has their out of office message up, are you emailing them or waiting till they get back?
Oh, that's a good one. Now I'm like feeling problematic because, because candidly, I do email them, particularly only if they're on like CC, so that when they return, they can see whatever like the email exchange was. But now I'm like thinking
Mm.
if I should be doing that or not.
See, I'm calling you out because I'm someone who works like, sometimes in the evening or weekend and will send messages to people, but sort of say, like, respond when you need to. And you told me I should be scheduling those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to tell you, you should be scheduling your emails for their return. Unless
Okay.
they're like, I'm checking my email periodically while I'm out or whatever. But it could
Okay.
be helpful to just, let people enjoy their time out. I also will say I do send emails, but I also send emails in the evening and weekend as well. And I allow people to sort of discern, do they need to respond now or not? I don't feel like that's creating pressure, but I also don't feel the pressure to respond either. But something to think about.
This is a do as we say, don't.
I'm not even saying what the right answer is here. I don't know that there is a right answer. You think I don't think there's a right answer. You think there's a right answer.
Do you think I can understand like if an email is sending directly to them, should they be taken off if they're like on CC?
No, I don't think I'm sending emails directly to
Oh,
people.
you're like
Is
I'm
what I'm saying. And I also will respect if they take 2 weeks to get back to me. I'm just trying to get it off of my plate so I don't forget. It's
okay.
my working style.
Well, I'm
I
changing
say do that, you say don't do that.
my behavior. I'm gonna stop as a result of this conversation. Okay, that was great. My do that or don't do that is should you share why you are taking time off or where you'll be?
I say don't do that.
Okay.
Not necessary. I think when at at work, I think it's great to talk about it, but like with your peers or colleagues, like if you're traveling and be like, oh, me and my family are taking vacation next week. I don't think in your out of office message you need to like detail all of those things. I think what is most relevant to the people emailing you is when will you be responding to my email and when are you returning to the office. So I think so long as you have that information in there, that's all that's required. And honestly, anything else just confuses people. As someone who has seen a ton of creative out of offices and been like, so when will you return? because I'm lost in like what's happening here.
What's the headline up front?
Yes,
You're not here. When do you return?
please. That's all I need to know. And if we're friends, like you can talk about whatever your travels are, but I don't need to see that in the out of office.
That's fair. I think I would also not share why I'm taking PTO or where I'll be unless it feels necessary. I think I'm not going to be here or I'll be out of the office is sufficient.
Okay. My do that or don't do that is pre-schedule mental health days.
Oh, absolutely. Do that. Yes.
Do that. Do you
All
take
for it.
days or like hours or
Whatever you need.
okay.
It can be 30-minute break or, the
Yeah.
week off. I think that's so helpful, especially if you know the rhythm of your work and if there's like a busy season versus a season that's not so busy. I think scheduling and being deliberate about taking that time can be really helpful, and I think it actually forces us to take the time off and not push it out to sometime later.
Are you using sick leave or vacation?
Whatever you need, whatever is available.
Whatever is
And I
available to
think with
you.
sick leave, that is more so you can't really schedule that. But I think with PTO, yeah, you can
Yeah.
schedule it.
I mean, you can schedule it. Other people are not going to be aware of the schedule, but you can personally schedule whatever you need to. Yeah. But I think that goes to the earlier question of like, do you need to communicate what you're doing all the time? I think what is important to communicate is like, what is the status of your work and
Yeah,
deliverables and what needs to go out. It is important to communicate like when you will be available and not, but I don't think it's important to say like, I have a doctor's appointment or I just need, 6 hours to not look at my computer screen every 2 weeks
yeah,
or whatever the thing is. So,
yeah. I would agree with that.
mm.
Well, my do that or don't do that is should you bank time off for later?
Bank time off for later. No, but I'm not really that type of personality either. I don't like 2 week vacations or anything like that. I actually started doing this thing that I call micro vacations,
Okay.
trademark pending. Just kidding. But I'll take like day trips or like 2 day trips more frequently because one, for me, it's easier as far as like childcare because my kids are in school during the week. So it's easier for me to do like a Friday or Thursday night to Saturday morning or like a Friday morning to Saturday evening trip because it requires less as far as like childcare is concerned. And especially if it's like a national travel, it is easy to get 2 solid days of like activity in there without it being so disruptive to my personal or professional life or anything like that. So I prefer that type of travel versus like I'm going to save it all and take December 15th through November 5th off type of thing.
Yeah, I love that. Many vacations. I would also say don't do that in terms of banking PTO for later. I have seen folks, especially if you're like on an accrual system, where folks will like literally save their vacation hours to the point where it's like, okay, just, at this point, just take the vacation. And I also feel like that doesn't, it perpetuates the always on culture that we
Yeah.
talked about. And I think it's great to be intentional about like actually stepping away from work, even if you have no vacation planned, to just be in your home
Yeah.
with nothing to do and no one to respond to. Like that is as valuable to me as it is to either hop on a flight or take a road trip.
Yeah. I do know that a lot of people also do that because companies pay out for vacation days. So
Hmm.
sometimes there's like a financial reason, which is why like a lot of companies have started to consider doing the unlimited leave so that they don't have to pay people out for those vacation hours. So I can see some people saying, like, okay, let me just bank my hours because I know I'm going to get these, whenever I transition or term out of this place. So,
Yeah, I got that. Yeah. Okay, you got one more for us?
um, I don't.
Okay, I'll do the last one.
Okay.
Do that or don't do that. Should you miss important family or friends events due to work?
Ooh, I mean, not if you can help it. I do think, again, there are some folks who cannot sort of manage that all the time. So I think it depends on what industry that you work in. But yeah, if you can help it, I think you should always try to be there. Like the example I can think of, like, my husband works in healthcare and there's no way that he can have every holiday off. Like it's just, he can't have it can't be 4th of July, Juneteenth, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. He's going to have to work, a few of those holidays. So we
Yeah.
try to just sort of think about which of those holidays, make sense for us and how we want to maybe, he might work Christmas, but he'll work in the evening so he can like open presents with the kids in the morning. Or he might work Thanksgiving, but it'll be in the morning because he'll be there for the afternoon and whatever. So, yeah, I think when you can help it, no, but I think some folks in different industries can't always help it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, and I think it obviously depends, excuse me, on the event. But I think that, showing up for your family and friends is always a good thing. And if you don't regret it, then make sure to make it a priority for
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have another before we close, just a follow up to that.
Okay.
Do that or don't do that. Like, would you quit a job that doesn't have good balance, or sort of like ride it out and hope for a change?
So I will answer at this point in my career and say, yes, I would um, quit or not accept a role that didn't allow for some work life balance. I think if I was like earlier in my career or wanted to have work experience that allowed me to grow, I probably would be okay with it for a certain amount of time.
Yeah,
I think it depends on where I am in my career cycle.
I agree. I mean, I think Uh, for me, I think about the times where I did have to invest more like physical time at work. I think that was helpful in getting me to a place where I don't always have to do that, or I do have more flexibility. So, um, yeah, I think to your point, it just depends on where in your life you are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been a really great discussion. Let's wrap up here and share our key takeaways. So, what's your key takeaway?
Yes. So for me, some key takeaways is in order to achieve work life balance, you definitely want to make sure that you have the right resources, both in your life and also at work. I think it helps to have financial resources in your personal life to help create some of that balance and support and things that you need, which can come from, a well-paying job, which might require a little more of your time. So I think you have to think about the balance in that way as well. To make sure that you have sort of like the agency to make whatever choices. So if at this time in your life you're like, I don't desire to be the boss babe and do all this stuff for work, I just want to spend more time like with my partner or family. Or if you feel like I really want to spend a lot of time at work. This is what sort of gives me energy in life, that you're able to do so without any sort of real consequence there. Um, and also thinking about, I think what we implicitly talked about today was also how much you share, and how things are communicated. Whether you are a senior leader and you're sort of like communicating what feels right or what your values are around work-life balance, how you're talking about what balance looks like you with colleagues, how you're sharing that in out of office or respecting other people's out of office. So I'm also thinking about how we talk about work life balance, and how we communicate it through our actions as well.
I love that. My final thought is that work life balance is not something that can completely be given to you, or to us. I think that it is something that we have to own and claim for ourselves and decide what that looks like at every stage in our life and career, and not to be afraid of being vocal about what those boundaries are for yourself, um, for fear of missing out or not achieving something, because our life evolves and ebbs and flows. And so I just think it's important to own it and to claim it and decide what it looks like for yourself at every stage.
I love that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for today's conversation. If you enjoyed our conversation, we invite you to leave a review on whatever platform you listen. It really does help to boost our engagement. And if you like today's conversation, or any previous episodes, please feel free to share this podcast with your peers and colleagues. If you'd like to reach Ani and I directly, email us at the don't do that pod at gmail.com. And until next time, remember,
Don't do that.